This video today is something special. It's my 100th video on YouTube. I've been doing this for over 3 years now, starting as just a 19-year-old kid talking about games, to now being a 22-year-old kid still talking about games. Oh, how my life has changed. In all seriousness though, in all my time on YouTube, the amount of support and love I've gotten from you guys and fellow creators here on YouTube is truly something special. And I don't want to draw this out for too long, but I just want to say thank you. There's big things ahead for MayorHairBear, and today for my 100th video, we're talking about something that is truly special. Before I get into what exactly we'll be going over in today's video, I want to clarify that I have 2 videos on both of the Alan Wake games. So if this is your first video of mine, maybe you're a fan of Alan Wake and you clicked on the video like, hell yeah, what did happen to Alan Wake 2? I'd recommend those videos in which I cover the story, characters, gameplay, and what exactly made Alan Wake so great, and why the fans want to see a sequel. So if you want a refresher on the Alan Wake series, I'll leave a link to these videos down below in the description, and in the top right now. Okay, on to the video. As you can see by the title of the video, today we'll be going over just what happened to Alan Wake 2. We'll be going over the aftermath of Alan Wake's release, Alan Wake 2's prototype demo, the announcement of Quantum Break and the community's reaction, and Quantum Break and its Alan Wake Easter eggs. And from here we'll go on to discuss reasons why Alan Wake 2 was sidestepped by Control and recent developments in regards to Alan Wake 2. I do want to clarify that this is not an attack on Control or Quantum Break. I am someone who is extremely excited to get my hands on Control, and Quantum Break was a day one purchase for me and a game I also really enjoyed. This video is a way to explore the timeline of Alan Wake 2's troubles, because we have multiple interviews and documentaries that I've sat through for this video that have Sam Lake clearly stating that Alan Wake 2 will be a reality one day.
Will we ever get to play Alan Wake 2?
Yes.
So after covering Alan Wake for the past couple of weeks, 45 minutes of video covering both games, it's finally time to cover what happened to Alan Wake 2.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
Alan, wake up.
Alan Wake released to mostly high praises from the major publishers and gamers alike. However, Alan Wake's release month of May 2010 only saw the game sell shy of 150,000 units, which in comparison to March of 2015, where the game had reached 4.5 units sold. But why were sales so slow upon release? Well, turns out Alan Wake was competing with the original and also one of my favorite games of all time, Red Dead Redemption, which released just a few days after Alan Wake. That's rough. However, despite these low initial sales, Remedy remained optimistic that they would be able to secure a sequel. This is clear upon seeing Alan Wake 2's prototype demo, that unfortunately only was released to the public in 2015 via Polygon, but actually was made back in 2010. This prototype was acting as Remedy's proof of concept for Alan Wake 2, and showed the mood and themes of what they intended Alan Wake 2 to be like back then. Unfortunately, the project never took off, and what we have here is all the footage we have for Alan Wake 2 as of the making of this video. Now, I'll get into why this prototype never took off a little later in the video, when we go into the recent developments. And whilst the video here does say that this prototype is basically acting as a demo for the potential sequel's ideas, and none of this demo would be part of the actual game, it is still really interesting to see what direction the game could have taken, as we see the story presented is being set up like a documentary about the urban legend that is now Alan Wake. It's also interesting to see just what parts of this prototype actually made its way over into Alan Wake's American Nightmare, such as the desert-themed setting and even some enemy types like the Birdman, and giving a bit more of a reason as to why so many people amongst the community at the time assumed Alan Wake's American Nightmare was actually going to be Alan Wake 2. As I mentioned though, this prototype did not progress any further, and upon the release of American Nightmare in 2012, the hype for a sequel only grew. Unfortunately for Alan Wake, it was a game that ended up gaining traction over time, as I stated before, when it reached 4.5 million copies sold in 2015. But by then, for the time being, the doors had closed on Alan Wake 2 as Remedy moved its focus to their next project in Quantum Break.
The number one killer is time. It destroys us all. This is what you need to know.
Before I start this segment, I just want to clarify that this part of the video will not be a review and breakdown of Quantum Break like my videos on Alan Wake and American Nightmare. But for now, I think it's important we stay focused and talk about just how Quantum Break connects to Alan Wake. So why Quantum Break? I think the most important interview/video that I watched through researching this topic was this video released the day Quantum Break was announced back in 2013 at the Xbox One reveal event. That honestly is a big reason why the like to dislike ratio is so average, and also why the community reaction is hard to garner, because, well, the YouTube comments basically devolved into a console war, or people mad that we didn't see any gameplay. But Sam Lake actually uploaded a video to Remedy's channel shortly after, talking to the fans and, more importantly, talking about why Alan Wake 2 was not going to be Remedy's next game.
After the first game, we worked hard to make the sequel happen. But you know, these games are huge undertakings and many things need to fall in place. The right partners and the funding.
Now, I'm not going to show the whole video, but he mentioned something that I've gone over already with this video. A big reason Alan Wake 2 didn't progress initially was because Remedy, from what I understand, was having trouble selling Alan Wake 2 to Microsoft due to the original game's initially low and slow sales. However, as he goes on to say, it was also an issue with technology at the time. You can tell Alan Wake means as much to Sam Lake and Remedy as it does to us, the fans, and I think that they personally weren't happy with how Alan Wake 2 was going in the early 2010s, and that the current hardware was limiting what innovations could be made to the Alan Wake universe. Quantum Break, however, would go on to tease a potential sequel for Alan Wake, as it is literally littered with Easter eggs. I mean, this one wasn't even trying. There's probably someone on YouTube who's tried to make sense of this chalkboard, but it's not going to be me. Now, as I said, there is a ton of these, and most are innocuous and just fun little tidbits like Alan Wake's books around the world, or this lady here playing Alan Wake at her desk. But the most important one is this TV right here.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
He's been gone for 5 years.
dark matter and dark energy constitute over 95% of our universe.
Now, whether this was a teaser of what's to come, or ideas they had for Alan Wake 2, or as it was announced last year, that Alan Wake is becoming a TV series. However, I'm leaning towards this maybe being a tease for a game, as the title on screen was Return, which, as I mentioned in my Alan Wake review, was the title of Alan Wake's plan to escape the darkness at the end of the game. Also from this interview from Ryan McCaffrey, who had a sit down and talk with Sam Lake recently. I highly recommend checking it out because it was truly interesting to hear Sam's thought process. But Sam revealed that the pitch to Microsoft for Alan Wake 2 contained within it a live action component like that which was seen in Quantum Break. So I don't think it's a big stretch to believe this Easter egg could be more related to a sequel than a TV series. Seeing a potential storyline in which Alan Wake enters another one of his works, seeing in the video that Mr. Scratch, or at least another Alan lookalike, has seemingly killed Alex Casey, the main protagonist of Alan Wake's best-selling series. Again, this could be an old concept for Alan Wake 2, or a look into a potential direction for the TV series, but nevertheless, I want it. Also, it is not that big a leap in terms of changing reality in Alan Wake with the written word to time travel and time control in Quantum Break, and the protagonists learning to control each of their elements. But with all the Alan Wake Easter eggs scattered throughout Quantum Break, many assumed that Alan Wake 2 would finally become reality. This will be a shorter part of the video, as Control isn't out as of the making of the video. But what I will say is that researching why Alan Wake 2 still hasn't happened, if nothing else, has done one thing for me. It's gotten me super excited to play Control. The reason for this being that, just as I mentioned before, Remedy was working on Alan Wake 2 straight after Alan Wake. This was the same with Quantum Break. Alan Wake 2 is a game that Sam Lake described as a game he is always working on and off. However, from what I've gathered between Quantum Break and Control, is that this time starting again with a new concept for Alan Wake's sequel, that it wasn't an issue with securing a publisher or funding, more so that the Alan Wake 2 they had been working on just didn't feel like an Alan Wake game anymore. So, now we have Control. Obviously, since Control is yet to be released as of the video, it's hard to say, or at least speculate, on what potential aspects of the game could have been from the idea of an Alan Wake 2 until it comes out in a couple of weeks. What I will say is that if you think that Remedy do not want to make an Alan Wake 2, now that Control is on its way, I personally believe that could not be further from the truth, and I think we need to remember, Control may have been a completely different game or non-existent if it had not started out as a concept for Alan Wake 2.
Who owns Alan Wake? Is it you or is it Microsoft?
We own
You
Alan
do have
Wake,
it.
yes.
So about a month ago, it was reported that Remedy had acquired the rights to Alan Wake. From reading this news without doing any research, my immediate thoughts were, oh, so that's the reason why we didn't get a sequel. And I almost scrapped the video right there. And I think many also thought this way. Unfortunately, I'm led to believe it was more complicated than this. Microsoft never actually owned the rights to Alan Wake as an IP. So technically, Remedy could have made an Alan Wake 2. But Microsoft owned the publishing rights to Alan Wake. It's a very weird loop that I'm not 100% on. But what I do know is that now, obviously, this is all much simpler. Remedy owns the rights still, and now the rights to publish the game and future games. Many have already assumed this means a PS4 version, and I agree. I think it comes to the PS4, maybe the Switch as well. I think this move proves Remedy's continued interest in a sequel. Have the original game out for as many people to play it for themselves, see what they missed, and build up that anticipation for a sequel. I don't think they'd have gone through the effort of acquiring these rights if they did not intend to release a new entry in the series.
But here I was, the yet unwritten future waiting to unfold before me. A sequel to Departure. My name is Alan Wake, and I'm a writer.
Alan Wake 2 is a game that will happen. Initially halted by a lack of sales with the original game's release, working Alan Wake tidbits and Easter eggs into Quantum Break clearly was because they intended to go on from this and work on Alan Wake 2 next. From here, I think Remedy realizes that now there is a bit of pressure on the sequel. There is that hype for it now. The game almost is no longer considered a cult classic. I believe they want the game to be something that is worth the wait. Hence why after Quantum Break released and they tried some ideas that wouldn't have made the game feel like Alan Wake, is why they moved on to Control. With Remedy now owning the publishing rights, the time for Alan Wake 2 is coming sooner. I'm excited for hopeful ports of the original games to different platforms to build that excitement in others, and obviously I'm excited to finally see Alan Wake 2. Maybe don't release it next to a big game next time. Maybe that will be the big game next time. But for now, that is what happened to Alan Wake 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a series that basically came from this one idea. I had no intention of doing these big videos on the Alan Wake games, but the support from you, the viewers, and the Alan Wake subreddit has really been something special. So seriously, thank you. More videos are on the way, but unfortunately that is it for Alan Wake on the channel until Alan Wake 2. Or the TV series. I mean, I'd cover that too. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave the video a like, comment below your thoughts on just what happened to Alan Wake 2 in your opinion, and when do you think we may finally see an Alan Wake 2. Subscribe if you're new. I do videos on the regular. As I teased during the video, we have a Quantum Break retrospective coming soon, along with some new game reviews, so keep an eye out for them. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at MayorHairBear for gaming pickups, gaming opinions, and thoughts as I'm playing through games, and in general, it's just a good way to stay up to date on the latest videos I'm working on. But again, thank you all for watching. This series truly did mean a lot for me, and to finally do it, and just the reception was incredible. But until next time, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.